Hello students, I am Dr. Harmeet Goel. Today I have come up with a video. I am discussing in this video the UPSC Combined Medical Services Exam 2019, the OBS and Gynae discussion, questions discussion.
So students, I am discussing now the UPSC Combined Medical Services 2019 OBS and Gynae questions. So I am sharing my screen. Now the first question is, which of the following is not the hormonal basis for hyperemesis gravidarum? Friends, paper 2 of UPSC exam contains around 40 to 45 questions of OBS and Gynae, and majority of you will be able to solve it. So the first question from 2019 UPSC Combined Medical Services exam is, which of the following is not the hormonal basis for hyperemesis gravidarum? Excess of chorionic gonadotropin. Number 2, excess of human placental lactogen. Number 3, excess of progesterone. And number 4, high serum levels of estrogen. This is a very simple question. Hyperemesis gravidarum means increased frequency of nausea and vomiting. So in this regard, the high levels of HCG are seen in pregnancy. It is responsible for hyperemesis gravidarum. High levels of progesterone also causes hyperemesis gravidarum. Even the high serum levels of estrogen, they are responsible. But human placental lactogen will not be responsible for hyperemesis gravidarum. So it is seen in the patients who have twin pregnancy or molar pregnancy where the HCG levels are high. So the chance of nausea vomiting is also high. So what does this excess of progesterone and estrogen do? It is responsible for retention of gastric contents. So responsible for increased vomiting in pregnancy. So HCG, HPL are being secreted by the placenta syncytial trophoblast. Progesterone and estrogen in the beginning of the pregnancy for the first trimester is being secreted by corpus luteum, and later on placenta takes over the function. So the answer to this question is HPL. Human placental lactogen is not responsible for hyperemesis gravidarum. Now the next one is, consider the following statements regarding pregnancy with Rh isoimmunization. Indirect Coombs test is performed in the mother. Methergine is withheld at the delivery of anterior shoulder. Middle cerebral artery. Peak systolic velocity is an accurate method to predict fetal anemia. Which of the following given statements above are correct? 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, or 1 and 3. So indirect Coombs test is performed, correct. Methergine is withheld, yes. Middle cerebral artery, the velocity is being measured to predict for fetal anemia. So all of the above according to me. All three are correct. 1, 2, 3, all are correct. So answer is B. Next, in fetus with spina bifida, which of the following signs may be seen on ultrasound? The lemon sign, the banana sign, defects seen in vertebral bodies, or tissue overlying it, all of these. So the correct answer is all of these, because lemon sign, banana sign is seen in open neural tube defects on ultrasound, and defect in the vertebral bodies or tissues overlying is seen. So all of these. In pregnancy with Down syndrome, consider the following biomarkers. That is, beta HCG is raised, alpha fetoproteins is raised, inhibin is decreased. Which of the above statement is correct? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1 only, 2 and 3, 1 and 2 only. Student, whenever you get such a questions, this is a pattern of the UPSC, okay, and the students who are writing the foreign medical graduate exam, this video is important for them also. So it's important for improving their clinical sense and attempting their questions in the exam very carefully. So beta HCG is raised. That is a correct statement. Alpha fetoproteins is raised. Wrong. Alpha fetoproteins is decreased. And inhibin levels is increased. And beta HCG is raised. This is the correct answer. Let's see which of the following matches. So our match is first only. That is only the beta HCG elevated is a correct answer. Next, a 25-year-old gravid to para-1 L1 Rh negative women presented at 30 weeks of gestation to an antenatal clinic. The indirect Coombs test was found to be positive, which would be the next line of management. Let's see. Anti-D to be given, ICT titers to be closely monitored at weekly intervals, amniocentesis for estimation of bilirubin by Lilly's chart is to be done, and babies to be delivered as soon as possible. Now, since in this case, the gestation is 30 weeks, okay? So, if the indirect Coombs test is positive at 30 weeks of gestation, we have to follow with serial titers of ICT, indirect Coombs test. And if the titers are crossing the critical level, that is 1:8 or 1:16, different centers take differently, then only there is an indication to go for amniocentesis to estimate the value of bilirubin and plot in the Lilly's chart. And if according to the Lilly's chart, there is mild, moderate and severe hemolysis, there is no indication in the mild hemolysis that baby is to be delivered as soon as possible. One thing more, students, you have to understand that first formed antibodies are the IgM antibodies, which are large molecular weight antibodies, and they do not cross placenta. So we don't know there is a first exposure only or there is a second exposure. So in this case, we have to follow this case by serial beta HCG. So I would like to mark the answer B. Next, given below are obstetric maneuvers and their indications, which are of the following is correctly matched. Mac-Roberts maneuver. Mac-Roberts maneuver is done in macrosomia. So here it is written breech, so this is wrong match. Lovset's maneuver is done for breech, but Lovset's is done for arm, extended arm. So this is also a wrong match. Pinard's maneuver is done for leg. Pinard's is for leg. So this is also a wrong match. So Ridgen's maneuver for fetal head is the correct answer. Okay. So Mac-Roberts is for macrosomia. Lovset's is for arm. Pinard's is for leg. So Ridgen is the correct answer. Now the maternal serum alpha fetoprotein levels is elevated in all except, this is a very, very straight and repeat question. You know, alpha fetoproteins are decreased in trisomies and Downs is trisomy 21. So in all these cases, alpha fetoproteins are elevated. So this is a repeat question, very, very simple and straight. Now, which of the following statements regarding Bartholin glands is not true? They are situated in superficial perineal pouch. The duct opens at the junction of anterior 1/3 and posterior 1/3. Here it is wrong. The duct opens at the junction of anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3 between labium minus and hymen. Even if you get your answer while reading the options, I will always advise you to read all the 4 options carefully and then mark your answer. So gonococcus is the most causative agent for the Bartholin abscess, correct. It is situated in the superficial perineal pouch, correct. The duct is lined by columnar epithelium, very correct. So these lines are clearly mentioned in your undergraduate textbook shows. So the wrong answer here is duct opens at the junction of. So for clearing the UPSC exam, you have to be very, very thorough with your final year MBBS subjects knowledge. All the questions are from your undergraduate textbook, Shaw's Gynae and Obstetrics, Datta. Next, an 18-year-old unmarried girl comes with the complaints of heavy, prolonged bleeding during menses. Which among the following investigations is not usually advised? Urine pregnancy test, ultrasound for uterus and adnexa, coagulation profile, and dilatation and curettage. Well, friends, I agree that in unmarried girl, this sounds little bit funny when it comes to urine pregnancy test, but let me tell you, the norm we have to follow, any female coming up with amenorrhea, pregnancy should be ruled out first. So in unmarried girl, there is no role of dilatation and curettage. Rest, ultrasound has been done, urine pregnancy test is to be done, and coagulation profile is to be done because bleeding disorders are common in such patients. Next, which one of the following is true? So here in this question, they were not talking about amenorrhea. They were talking about prolonged bleeding during menses or heavy bleeding. So why there is a urine pregnancy test? Because there may be a possibility of incomplete abortion you have to rule out. For that, history of coitus is very, very important. So dilatation and curettage is not advised as the investigation in case of prolonged and heavy menses in unmarried girl. Which one of the following is true about basal body temperature? Basal body temperature, there is a rise of basal body temperature seen under the effect of progesterone. There is 0.5 degree centigrade rise, okay, that confirms that ovulation has taken place. So biphasic pattern, yes. Increase in the levels of the progesterone, correct. Temperature falls, this is wrong. Temperature rises, not fall. It can predict ovulation precisely, no. It is a test to predict ovulation, but precisely not. The best investigation for ovulation is ultrasound follicular monitoring that has been done by transvaginal scan, or you can estimate the serum progesterone levels on day 21. Value more than 15 nanograms per ml is confirmatory for ovulation. So basal body temperature, cervical mucus tests are the predictors of the ovulation, but they are not very, very recommended nowadays. So I would go for the answer 1 and 2. Next, consider the following statements regarding infertility. Endometrial biopsy provides information regarding ovulatory factor. Both tubal and peritoneal factors can be assessed by laparoscopy. Unexplained infertility may be due to luteal phase defects. Yes. Luteal phase defects means serum progesterone deficiency. So here progesterone support is done. So tubal and peritoneal factor of infertility, the gold standard is laparoscopy. And for uterine factor of infertility, the gold standard is hysteroscopy. Endometrial biopsy is also a predictor for ovulation. You see secretory endometrium. So according to me, all of the three statements are correct. Okay. So I would like to mark answer D. Next, which one of the following about primary dysmenorrhea is not true? Confined to adolescent, always confined to ovulatory cycles, pain increases following pregnancy. This is very, very wrong. Following pregnancy, the pain decreases because there is an ovulation and there is progesterone present in pregnancy. So the pain of dysmenorrhea is not there because the menstruation and ovulation is suspended during pregnancy. Pain is related to uterine hypoxia. Well, students, this is also correct. So the wrong statement here is pain increases, rather pain decreases. Consider the following statements regarding diameters of a normal female pelvis. Anteroposterior diameter is the shortest diameter at pelvic brim. Oblique diameter is the largest diameter of the inlet. No. Largest diameter of the inlet is the transverse diameter, which is 13 centimeters. Okay. Oblique diameter is 12 centimeters, so that is not largest. Diagonal conjugate cannot be directly measured. No, diagonal conjugate is the only conjugate which you can measure clinically. Okay, even in my image-based question, I've discussed the diagonal conjugate is the only conjugate that you can measure clinically. So here the answer is C. AP diameter is the shortest diameter at the pelvic brim. Now, which of the following is not a characteristic clinical feature of bacterial vaginosis? Bacterial vaginosis, that is Gardnerella vaginalis, the infection occurs when the pH is more than 4.5. This is correct. Thick curdy white vaginal discharge. Curdy white vaginal discharge is seen in candidiasis. So this is a wrong answer. Amine odor in, actually it is called as fishy odor. That is correct. Clue cells are seen, correct. So the wrong answer is thick curdy white vaginal discharge. Next, which of the following are the vaccines for prevention of cancer cervix? Well, students, this is a very straight: Cervarix and Gardasil. Cervarix is a bivalent vaccine against HPV 6 and 11, and Gardasil is quadrivalent vaccine against HPV. Sorry, this is 16 and 18, and this is HPV 6, 11, 16 and 18. Now there is Gardasil 9, that is nonavalent vaccine. In my video of the awareness against cancer cervix, vaccinate the younger generation, I've already talked about these vaccines. So you can go through the video. So Gardasil 9 nonavalent is HPV 6, 11, 16, 18, 31, 33, 45, 52 and 58. Okay, so nonavalent vaccine. So age group for this vaccination is 9 to 26 years, and boys and girls all should be vaccinated. So answer is 1 and 2, Cervarix and Gardasil. Next, consider the following statements regarding carcinoma cervix. Clinical staging is done, correct. Treatment is provided if the stage 1 leads to survival rate 80 to 90%. Treatment if provided, yes, correct. Okay, so whether you consider surgery or you give radiotherapy, the 5-year survival rate in stage 1 cancer cervix is around 85%. Surgery is preferred in young women with stage 3. No, stage 2B, stage 3, stage 4. It is chemo radiation, chemotherapy and radiotherapy. HPV virus is considered the causative agent. Yes. So the wrong answer here is 3. Surgery is only done up to stage 2A. From 2B, 3 and 4, it is chemoradiation, and the radiosensitizer drug in cancer cervix is cisplatin. So which of the following above are correct? So it is, you have to rule out 3. So it is 1, 2 and 4. 1, 2 and 4. Next, which one of the following is not a mandatory procedure for FIGO staging in cancer cervix? Pelvic examination is the first clue. Biopsy is done. Nowadays, colposcopic directed biopsy, or you can do punch biopsy if there is an obvious growth, that is done. Endocervical curettage to rule out adenocarcinoma cervix. Ultrasound abdomen, no rule. Next, consider the following statements regarding uterine leiomyoma. Prevalence is highest between 35 to 45 years, yet it is a disease of reproductive age group as it is estrogen dependent for growth. More common in nulliparous, that is also correct. Displays a reversible shrinkage after the treatment with GnRH. Requires to be treated only if symptomatic. So let's see. GnRH is very good drug. So according to me, the all options are correct. Next, a 58-year-old woman with suspected ovarian cancer was operated for surgical staging on laparotomy The histopathological examination has shown that both ovaries are involved, capsule is ruptured, a site is present, malignant cells, but uterus and tubes are normal. And there is no peritoneal implants. So FIGO stage, this is stage 1. So you read the staging. Now, which of the following is a serum marker for epithelial ovarian tumors? Straight question, CA125. Alpha-fetoprotein is a tumor marker for yolk sac tumor. HCG is a tumor marker for choriocarcinoma. Next, which of the following is not an ideally suited condition for the use of ring pessary? Not for the uterine prolapse. Pessary is recommended during pregnancy, usually in the early trimesters, first and second. It is recommended in puerperium, elderly patients who are unfit for surgery, and those who are not willing for surgery. So late pregnancy, it has no role because as the uterus has enlarged, so prolapse will also reduce. Okay, so the answer is A. Now, labor is called normal if it fulfills the following criteria except vaginal breech delivery. Wrong. That's against the definition of normal labor. Okay. So vaginal delivery with episiotomy, correct, vertex presentation, spontaneous onset, all these three are criteria. Malpresentation is excluded. Which of the following methods is not used for cervical cancer screening? Pap smear, yes, is a screening test. VIA, that is visual inspection under acetic acid. This is used for mass screening. This is clinical when you are sitting in the hospital or where there is facilities for PAPs. For the mass screening by the health worker, it is VIA and VILI which is being used. VILI is visual inspection under Lugol's iodine. So all three are used. Cervical biopsy is a confirmatory test. And it is done for suspected cases after the pap smear report. Consider the following regarding the use of magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate is a drug of choice for severe preeclampsia with warning symptoms and eclampsia. It is also used as a prophylactic agent to prevent the preterm labor pains. It is also neuroprotective, the studies have shown, and used in the management of postpartum eclampsia. Correct. So according to me, all three are correct. 1, 2, and 3. Which of the following is not a common cause for recurrent abortion? Diabetes is always a cause of recurrent abortions because it leads to congenital anomalies and congenitally malformed fetuses are likely to get aborted. Antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. There are autoantibodies which are responsible for abortions and multiple thrombi formation. Chromosomal anomaly is the most common cause for first trimester recurrent abortions. Torch infection causes abortion, but it is never the cause of recurrent abortions. So answer here is torch. Contraindications for uterine cerclage for incompetent os are all except previous history of suggestive of abortion due to incompetent os. Contraindications are all. This is an indication actually. Ruptured membrane, you can't apply uterine cerclage. Cervical cerclage actually it is called as, not uterine, cervical. But in the UPSC paper, the term used was uterine, it is cervical and cerclage. Bulging membranes, no, you cannot apply. History of vaginal bleeding, no. So the correct answer is previous history of suggestive of abortion. Most common cause for early spontaneous abortion, this is very, very straight chromosomal abnormality. Causes of fetal growth restriction may be chromosomal abnormality, congenital abnormality, abnormal cord insertions, all 1, 2, and 3, all are the causes. Which one of the following regarding the fetal growth restriction is not true? Fetal daily movement count is advised, yes. Biophysical profile is done, yes. Delivery always at 34 weeks, why? Umbilical artery Doppler studies are done. So wrong answer is delivery always recommended at 34, no. we always try to take the pregnancy to 37 completed weeks and then deliver. Which of the following statements regarding contraception is not true? Vaginal ring is a barrier. Vaginal ring is not a barrier. It is nuva vaginal ring, which is to be inserted for 3 weeks in the vagina and 1 week off. This is a separate category of contraception and it contains estrogen and progesterone. Okay, so it is not barrier. It is a separate contraceptive method. Implanon is a hormonal contraceptive. Yes, it releases hormone. Copper T can be used as postcoital. Yes, this is the best postcoital contraception. Copper T is inserted just after delivery. Correct. Next, a 26-year-old para-2L2 has just had delivery. What are the contraceptive choices she has at this level? I would say nowadays the copper T insertion is done after the delivery of the placenta. This is latest recommendation. Postpartum ligation can also be done because she's already had 2 children and like that can be considered. Oral contraceptive pill is not advised as it suppresses the lactation. Lap ligation is not done because uterus is at a higher level. So it will, if you put in a laparoscope, it will puncture the uterus. So 1 and 2 only. Next, 22-year-old woman comes with complaints of pain and discomfort in the vaginal region. On examination, there is unilateral tender swelling in the posterior half of labium minus, underlying centimeters, which is the most probable diagnosis. Well, this is Bartholin abscess clear cut. Nothing with the prolapse, nothing with inversion, nothing with trichomoniasis. Because it is written as tender swelling. Next, 29-year-old woman is noted to have 3 consecutive first trimester spontaneous abortion and examination reveals fibroid uterus, and which of the following types of uterine fibroids would most likely lead to recurrent abortions? Well, usually fibroids cause the second trimester abortions. So mostly the fibroid, submucosal fibroid fits into this category, can cause the first trimester abortions also. Rest usually do not cause abortions. A 25-year-old infertile woman is noted to have the blocked fallopian tubes on hysterosalpingography. Which of the following is the best next step for this woman? Clomipene citrate therapy, gonadotropin therapy, laparoscopy, intrauterine insemination. Blocked fallopian tube on HSG. HSG is a screening test. Next confirmatory will be always laparoscopy. So go for laparoscopy. Tubal block on HSG should be confirmed on laparoscopy. The contraceptive choice for a 38-year-old woman, chronic hypertension, history of dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, chronic hypertension, dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, already malignancy ruled out. So usually this goes in favor of, there may be endometriosis leading to this problem, or there may be adenomyosis. So LNG IUCD reduces the menstrual blood loss and it is not contraindicated in hypertension and it treats dysmenorrhea also. So that is a correct answer. Which of the following drugs does not interfere with the efficacy of OCPs? Rifampicin interferes, ampicillin interferes, barbiturates interfere, ranitidine does not interfere. So the answer is ranitidine. Next, which one of the following antihypertensive drugs is not safe during pregnancy? Not. So straight away the answer is ACE inhibitor because they cause teratogenic effect and they cause placental insufficiency. And the antihypertensive of choice in pregnancy is labetalol. Tubectomy is commonly performed at which site? Tubectomy is commonly performed at ischemic site. 60-year-old woman presents with Postmenopausal bleeding on endometrial curettage, she is diagnosed as endometrial carcinoma. Which one of the following is a risk factor for endometrial carcinoma postmenopausal bleeding? Age is 60, postmenopausal bleeding, endometrial carcinoma risk factor. Multiparity, no. Multiparity is protective. Nulliparity is a risk factor. OCPs, no. Smoking, actually no. Diabetes. So obesity, diabetes, hypertension, increased estrogen exposure, tamoxifen, nulliparity, PCOD, endometrial hyperplasia are all risk factors. So here the answer is diabetes. Next, 29-year-old woman presents in the emergency ward with amenorrhea 6 weeks. Amenorrhea 6 weeks, pain, urine pregnancy test positive, tenderness in the lower abdomen, and there is difficulty to accomplish the due to guarding. Pelvic examination not properly done, and beta HCG is elevated. No pregnancy in the uterus. So amenorrhea 6 weeks and pain. Which type of ectopic pregnancy ruptures at less than 6 weeks ischemic? So urine pregnancy test positive, amenorrhea, pain, and because of so much of guarding, the examination properly cannot tell about adnexal mass, and uterus is empty of any gestation sac. So why to wait? Straight away, I would like to take up for laparotomy because there is a moderate fluid in the abdomen. So it may be a ruptured ectopic. Which one of the following is not done as a screening test for in pregnancy? VDRL is done, yes. Diabetes, it is done. Neural tube defects, yes. Serum cholesterol, no. Next. Amniocentesis is called for in all of the following circumstances except mother age 35 years, yes. Mother had a child with Downs, yes. Parents who are known to have chromosomal translocation, yes. Father age 50, no relation. LNG20 Mirena is a third generation intrauterine device. What are the advantages of its use? Low uterine pregnancy rate, prevents anemia, long effective life of 5 years, no effect on incidence of ectopic pregnancy. It reduces. So 1, 2, 3 are correct according to me. That's all. Thank you.